Good morning, everybody. Hi, how are you? Welcome to Ask the Experts, an award-winning daily live show from 8:30 to 9 a.m. to help small businesses. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments or on the live feed. If you need any advice, any more advice, join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. During the live session, we'll be running a poll, so do engage with it, and at the end, we'll reveal the results. So tomorrow, you can attend the Intuit QuickBooks virtual event, QuickBooks Connect. The virtual event brings entrepreneurs, small business owners, and accountants together to grow, learn, and connect with each other. Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Goldsmith, and I am a franchising expert. I've worked all around the world across a great number of sectors. I think it's fair to say when people ask, I'm fairly passionate about the concept of franchising and what franchising can do, especially from a social impact point of view all around the world. So I thought I'd start off and sort of just start chatting to you about the diversity of franchising, because even to this day, franchising is a massive part of every community in Britain, in America, all around the world, really. But very, very few people know which businesses are franchised and which aren't. And really, there's a very big perception that, franchising is really McDonald's and it's KFC and Domino's Pizza and those kind of big sort of food and beverage sort of sectors. But franchising is so diverse, right? So I'm just going to talk to you about, some of the clients that I've come across in the last few weeks. I've been on this new social media app called Clubhouse, and some of the people that I've met over there that are franchising have just been absolutely fascinating. So franchising is something that can be the big McDonald's and it can be the big restaurant groups, but also can be a guy who moved from Australia and went to Amsterdam and decided that he was going to make a bit of money on the side by dipping strawberries into chocolate and decorating them. He's built an absolutely incredible franchise business. It is franchised all over the world, China, the Middle East, pretty much, growing exponentially. And so from something as basic as just dipping strawberries in chocolate, all the way to a chap from Liverpool that I met a few days ago, who does cookie dough desserts in Sydney, Australia. And within 7 months, he managed to get himself so popular that he was able to go and get a little unit. He's already looking at a second and a third unit in Sydney. And the people are just queuing up for his cookie dough desserts, and they all started just from their kitchen at home. There are basic businesses like Rugby Stars, excuse me, up in Leicester. Just a dad who was looking for a place for his kids to go and do some rugby. And he wasn't happy with what was around there, so he decided to start it himself. He's on his 4th branch. He's expanding into Winchester and various other places. Absolutely amazing to see. There's a lady up in Manchester who does pregnancy yoga. Again, just a mum who was looking around and she couldn't find the thing that she was looking for and decided to franchise it because it was the quickest and the easiest way to try and kind of expand the knowledge and expand the love across Britain. Phenomenal lady. She's been highlighted by Getty Images and various other institutions for the good work that she's been doing around this area. Truly inspirational. And then it goes all the way through to secondhand car sales, right? So franchising that concept. So it's a concierge concept that we're busy working on at the moment, and it's all about just making sure that people are looked after properly when they go and buy a secondhand car. Because it is quite an intimidating experience. So what they've done is they've created this concierge service, right? So it's all about taking you through a journey, making sure that you are comfortable and find the correct car for you. These are all great examples. There are thousands of other examples of where franchises are in and around your community, especially in the children's sector. There are probably around about 550 different children's activities franchises out there. So if you have young kids and you send them to a class, the odds are it is actually a franchise. But I want to bring you around to another reason why franchising is so important and what kind of impact it can have. I've been working very, very hard in the social impact space for franchising. And we're working on an initiative at the moment with one of the big banks in South Africa, as well as the Franchise Association of South Africa, to bring about something called social impact franchising, right? So we've got this initiative called Franchising for Africa, and our whole purpose is to take the fight to poverty through the structure of franchising. Now, you might think that, right, we're going to put a Domino's pizza in, or we're going to put something, one of these big name franchises out there. But actually, it's not about that. So franchising is a system, right? It is an underlying system that supports the growth of an entrepreneur or of a business. It is one of those where, if you were to go and do what I call a DIY business now, so the non-franchise businesses, traditional business, what you're looking at is you are personally going to have to go and find yourself a mentor, and you're going to have to go and find yourself a coach, and you're going to go and have to figure out how your business works in the first place. The advisors that you get around you more than likely haven't actually been in your industry. 9 times out of 10, that is the case. Within franchising, that's exactly the opposite, right? So what happens is even the most basic business. So let's just call it a window cleaning business. So, a guy out there, he wants to build a business. He is interested in just doing something as simple as window cleaning. What happens is we put in the structure, the franchising structure, where surrounding him, he will have a mentor who knows what they are doing. There will be a technical person who knows what they are doing. There will be a marketing person who knows how to advise him to do his marketing properly. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to actually create longevity in these businesses. Because the fundamental problem that we have, and that I've seen with my own eyes with charities and NGOs, is they go out to places like Africa, and more often than not, they bring big money, they do big initiatives, they put up these most incredible aquaponics kind of setups, and these greenhouses and all kinds of really great initiatives to try and alleviate poverty and let communities kind of develop some money for themselves. But what happens is at some point, the people who are driving those projects start pulling out. And at that point, these projects start falling to pieces. So if you drive around Africa, it is strewn with the relics of good causes. Greenhouses that are basically just the piping now. All of the materials and things have been shredded. It's unbelievable. And I don't actually blame the people who are there, because one of the examples that kind of works in Britain, it's when the Romans left. It still blows my mind that people decided to stop having underfloor heating like they do just down the road here in Bath. Roman house, underfloor heating. Romans go, nobody has underfloor heating anymore. It's a simple thing, but it is very, very profound. So what we are doing is we're taking these principles of franchising, right, and we are going and we are creating small micro businesses. And we're taking the fight to poverty one person at a time, one family at a time. And by doing one family at a time, we are able to impact one community at a time, because communities are really tight out there. And by maintaining that structure of mentorship and marketing, etc., what we're able to do is we're actually able to help people, create the longevity that they need in their projects. So, this is very, very exciting to me, and it's another reason why franchising is such an important part of what goes on in the world, in the business community, because it is a very, very, very successful model. I've mentioned this in previous talks. Just in the UK, the statistics are that 93.7% of people who go into franchising, franchisees, are not only still in business after 3 years, but they're actually profitable. And almost the exact same statistic, or at least the opposite statistic, exists for DIY businesses, or businesses that are kind of started from the ground up by an entrepreneur. Not saying either one is right or wrong, just saying that if you were to choose a methodology in order to be to ensure success, franchising is a very, very, very good one. So good. So look, I'm going to go to some questions, and this is always the fun part. So the first question I'm going to is Junior from Twitter, direct messaging. Working with so many business owners and being one yourself, what have you learned? Do you find that many business owners seem to have the same worries and challenges? Junior, that is 100% the case. So the beauty of franchising, and the one thing that I've been very, very fortunate, because there aren't very many people like myself who've worked in huge amounts of sectors and specifically, go from sector to sector to learn more. And the thing that I've noticed from a 30,000 foot view is that the pattern of challenges and success is very, very, very clear, right? So all of the challenges that a franchisee would go through, somebody who's starting their own business would go through too. And it's almost predictable in nature, right? The questions that come up are almost predictable. So, how do I scale, as an example? How do I find my first employee? How do I take my business to this level? They are very, 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 very similar, and there's a clear pattern there. In fact, it's one of the things that I'm working on with, at the moment, is we're trying to take the lessons from franchising, because there's a baseline, because there is a predictability in franchising that doesn't exist anywhere else. And because you can sometimes have hundreds of people with that same baseline, we're busy looking at developing a system that will actually start helping entrepreneurs predict what is coming and what challenges they're going to have and what they need to do to solve problems because of that pattern that exists. So, it's a great question, and definitely the case. So, session from Instagram DM. Hi, Sean. If I become a franchisee, do I need to be a GM or can I just oversee? It just depends on the franchise that you go into, Session. There are huge numbers of franchises which are, effectively called management franchises. And that is exactly where, what you mean over there with GM. So you become the person who effectively steers the ship. You are the brains behind it, and you are overseeing everything. And then you can have a number of teams, working below you. So there are franchisees, especially in the food and beverage sector here in the UK. There's one chap who owns about 170 Domino's pizzas, I think. So you can have a massive head office and run it like a corporate without having to actually physically get involved in the business. And it is getting more and more popular. I actually help develop this even in the children's sector now. The lower sectors, because one thing that's becoming very clear is that people are less keen on taking on long leases and property. So service-based franchises are really interesting because their profitability is actually very, very, very high. So in some cases you can see 80% profitability because there are no overheads. So yeah, definitely can do that. Silas from Twitter DM. Hi, Sean. My biggest question is, how large is the time commitment in owning a franchise such as Nando's, KFC, or Subway? Silas, it's exactly the same as running any other business, right? I would say that there are no shortcuts to success, but what you get with franchising is simply a guide. So you've got somebody who's walking there with you and who can point out the pitfalls and the potholes, etc. So what you're doing is you are just able to continue running it at a set speed, as opposed to if you were starting a Nando's by yourself, right? You would have to figure out all the challenges. You would have to go through all the pain. You would have to do all of that kind of stuff by yourself, which effectively just means it takes a lot longer to get to where you're going. But no, so, this is full time. You need to be dedicated. Just because you're part of a franchise doesn't mean that it's easy. It still requires huge amounts of hard work. The Nando's, Nando's I don't believe are franchised here in the UK, but KFC and Subway certainly. KFC is a great business. It's owned by a fantastic sort of head office, sort of group head office, and their support is brilliant. But still very, very hard work. Remember, it's very competitive out there. Subway, the same thing. With Subway, generally speaking, in order to make decent money, you need to be a multi-unit owner. Just because, again, the competitive nature of what's going on out there. But definitely a full-time job. Don't try and shortcut it. I guess the only time that you can kind of pull yourself out of it is when you do have multiple units, so that you can actually, you can have a management team in place, etc. But that's exactly the same as any business that you'd find out there. Right, so Jack from Facebook Messenger. I love what you're doing to help communities. Cheers, Jack. Do you think any sector in the franchise world can work to do social good? I really do. So I've been very, very involved. In fact, I've been spending a lot of time listening and talking to John O'Brien, who was one of Prince Charles's advisors when it comes to social impact and doing good in the world. We've been looking at all kinds of things like the new B Corp situation. I think there's also something in Britain called Blueprint, where as a company, you don't necessarily become a social enterprise or a community interest company. What you simply do is you become, as an example, this B Corp, where it becomes a contractual obligation for your company to do good in the world. There's a point system. It's a very rigorous process to kind of get qualified. But I can't see why any franchise out there couldn't really turn their hand to doing social good in the world. And I'll give you a good example. So I've launched another sort of initiative called Franchise Britain, where as the franchising world, what our goal is, what our aim is to try and help over 200 people get into franchising, the 200 people who've had a hard time through COVID. So we hear so many stories now of single parents that basically their business failed because they had to do homeschooling. There's loads and loads of examples like that. And as a community, we decided, well, hold on, we're gonna try and do some social good here in Britain by giving away, and our goal is 200 franchises, right? And let me tell you, within 2 weeks, we had over 50 pledged from every sector you can imagine. So yeah, very, very, very much so. I do think that the franchising world has the ability to focus on social good. Given the opportunity, I've met very few franchisors that wouldn't do it very willingly. There are generally, and I run a big mastermind group with a lot of franchisors in. They're fantastic people. They're really honorable people, generally speaking, and they really do want to do good in the world. Great question, though. Thanks, Jack. Colin from Facebook Messenger. Hi, Sean. Can we look at the franchise industry as an investment option? I want to invest my money in the business, but don't want to handle the day-to-day operations. Is there an option to do this? Would be great if you could share some examples. Colin, you know what? Actually, it is a genius idea, and this happens a lot in America. So in the States especially, what happens is, there'll be private investors, angel investors who are specifically going back, franchisees, and in order to see a fantastic return on investment. And you can get a great return on investment. If there was ever a business to invest in, it would be into an individual franchise unit, because again, what you have is you have the absolute certainty that there's a head office, there's a marketing team, there's all these people who make the odds of success of that franchise unit very great. What you're able to do with your investment, you're able to fast forward the growth of that particular business. So, as I mentioned, like the Subway or the KFC, instead of somebody going and buying one, taking their own capital in order to be able to, launch the business, what you might be able to do with your money is basically give them the ability to take a multi-unit or at least an area developer agreement where they're able to build up 5. The return on investment is much quicker. The ability for them to actually centralize all these services in order to service those different operations is very, very high. It's not something that happens a lot in the UK, but if you are interested in doing it, I'm connected with pretty much all of the major franchisors in the UK, and I can give you a very good idea as to where it would be a good idea to spend your money. So yeah, feel free to contact me about that. Walter from Twitter DM. Good morning. I've been reading up on how the loss of jobs has fueled the franchise industry. Are these opportunities in the form of ownership, or is it from the employment point of view? If it is the former, then how are individuals affording to build these businesses on their own? Thanks. Walter, I'm not sure if you mean sort of companies starting as franchises, or if it's just people buying franchises. Yeah, there's been a massive sort of growth in people converting their businesses into franchises, because the one thing the pandemic has done is it's given business owners a lot of time to think. Do they want a branch network? Is there a better way? Is there a way for them to scale without having to invest huge amounts of money? And franchising does all of those. That was actually the original intent of franchising back in the day when Singer first franchised, right? It was to be able to expand their influence without having to put huge amounts of money into it, capital expenditure. Yeah, there has been a growth. In terms of buying franchises, it's actually been very, very slow. And part of that has been because there's a lot of interest out there. There's a lot of people looking at buying franchises. But because of how the pandemic has panned out here in the UK, because it's been stop-start, because of furlough, a lot of people that, potentially right now, so similar to 2008, would have already bought franchises. They just haven't, because there have not been the redundancies yet, and that kind of chaos after the storm yet. But that will definitely come. By all accounts, the growth of franchising is going to be exponential in the next few months, or at least once kind of the vaccines rolled out, etc. And just to give you an idea, like even just the swimming industry right now, I don't think there's a franchisor out there that has a waiting list of kids wanting to go back to swimming lessons of less than 1,000 to 2,000. So most of the bigger franchises that I've been in sort of contact with literally have 2,000 child waiting lists at the moment just to get back into swimming. And if you think about it, if somebody's being made redundant and they hear about that pent up demand, it's a great investment to get into franchising. I hope that kind of answers the question. Lena from Instagram. Hi, how did you get into the franchising industry? Oh, it's a long story. Basically, I arrived in the UK in 2001, and one thing led to another, and I started a little recruitment company, and we ended up having 800 people working for Amazon and various other places. So by the age of 24, we were, I think we were invoicing one Christmas something like £750,000 a week, to places like Amazon, because of the staffing that we had out there. It's all turnover, right? It's all vanity numbers. Again, the contract came to an end over there, and I just bumped into a very charismatic Australian guy who was into franchising, and suddenly realized at the age of sort of 26, 27, that my experience in business as a young person far outweighed the experience of many, many other people that were out there and getting into business. So, at the age of 27, I was the GM of one of the largest franchise groups in the UK. We eventually took that company to the stock exchange. And since then, I've been a massive, massive fan of franchising, because, I think it's franchising for me is much more of a mission than it is a career. Just purely because I've seen the incredible good it can do. I've seen how it's taken people who had a hard time their whole lives, and they somehow managed to get enough money to build or to buy a franchise, and suddenly they turn their lives around, right? And they've built up these incredible businesses. So I'm a big fanboy of franchising because of the social good that it can do. So I hope that kind of, in a long-winded way, kind of answered the question. Hartley from Instagram. Hi, Sean. Can you talk a little bit more about what corporate franchising is? I'm not sure about that exact phrase, but I'm guessing what you're meaning is multi-units or management franchises. So what that basically means is you go into the business with the mindset of scaling. So you don't actually physically become a hands-on cleaner or window cleaner or chicken fryer or anything like that. But what you are doing is you're actually going in there and you're starting to build an empire, so to speak. And it's very much an American phrase, but hey, kind of works in this context. So your mindset, the support that you get, and everything around it is quite different from if you were going to be an owner operator. So what they used to call the man in the van kind of franchise, where you are the person who's delivering the service itself. It's absolutely fantastic, and as I said to you before, I kind of kicking into tradition a little bit, because what a lot of people that have these big gym franchises and food franchises don't actually understand is that the little franchises, the little sort of service-based franchises, even children's franchises, if it was treated like a big business, right? If it was treated like a management franchise, where there's somebody coming in and looking to develop a group of 10 or 12 of a particular type of class in a particular area, the profitability far outweighs the big franchises. So for much less effort, you know, the returns are incredible in comparison. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question. That yeah, you know, I'm not sure I came across the corporate franchising sort of phrase, you know, recently. Anyway, so moving on to Lauren. I've started my business 1 year ago and recently started to look at franchising as an option to scale. Any advice on what I should think about in these early days? Yeah, Lauren, look, I mean, you know, it's very, very, very important in franchising to get your fundamentals right and get your well, franchising is a thing where you are taking on a responsibility to help a great number of other people to start their businesses and feed their families, right? So it's much more than just a business opportunity, and it's much more than just scaling, right? It is actually, you are going to be enabling a lot of other people. So the responsibility on your shoulders to get it right, very, very high. So I'm going to tell you a scary statistic, but also one that should give you a lot of comfort. So if you do your foundational work correctly, right, and you get it all right, and at these early stages, you're doing just the right thing, you're thinking about it, you're trying to figure out exactly what the right way to do it is, you know, if you get that all right, then franchising is going to be a dream for you. The scary statistic is that 80% of companies that try and franchise fail, right? So sometimes they fail before they get one franchisee, and sometimes they fail when they've got 15 or 20 franchisees. But it is a scary statistic, and it's only down to the foundational work being done incorrectly. It's very, very difficult at the moment out there because with a pandemic and job losses, a lot of people who once kind of looked in the direction of franchising or, you know, heard the word franchising are now suddenly franchising consultants. So be very careful who you turn to for advice. I'd be more than happy to help you, just guide you along the way. Please feel free to contact me, you know, directly, and I'd be very, very happy to do that with you. Right. Okay. Great. So I'm going to start wrapping up, and let's just go over to the poll results. So the poll results are in, and we asked you, have you ever sacrificed anything for your employees? Unsurprisingly, 100% of you said yes. I mean, this is basically one of the fundamentals of being an employer, isn't it? I don't think very many people realize it when they're an employee, but employers, and I see this from the franchising side of things a lot, you know, they sacrifice a great deal. Eventually it pays off, and eventually they start, you know, seeing some returns. But in the early days, you know, it is not uncommon for an employer to be earning a lot less money than even the you know, the most junior employees in the business. So well done to all of you, by the way, for saying that. So guys, listen, thank you for tuning in. If you want to get in contact with me, you can email me on sean@theopcenter.com or visit my website, theopcenter.com. Coming up on Ask the Expert tomorrow is Michelle Flynn, who's a certified mental health coach and works with individuals and companies to help them understand their health and happiness goals. Tomorrow, she will talk about the mixed emotions people are experiencing after this past year and coming out of lockdown, and how we can deal with our emotions. So don't forget to join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB group on Facebook, and also register for QuickBooks Connect. You can find the link in the comments. So have a wonderful day, guys. Contact me if you have any questions.